Woman, listen carefully. There comes a moment in your life when the loudest sound in heaven is the silence of your decision. Not the prayers you prayed, not the tears you cried, not the pain you endured, but the decision you made in the quietness of your spirit. One decision, one move, one shift. That is what surprised heaven. That is what altered the course of your life. And you see, life will always test what you are attached to. As long as your emotions are tied to people, places, or positions, you will live in cycles of disappointment. But the day you detached, when you stood up, looked at what used to hold you, and said, no more, heaven leaned over and said, this is it. She understands now. What moves God is not your ability to endure abuse, manipulation, or fear. What moves Him is when you realize you are more valuable than the environment you tolerated. Detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. It is not rejection. It is redirection. You stop negotiating your worth with people who could not afford your destiny. And in that moment, angels were dispatched, doors unlocked, and favor was released. Do you know why this surprised heaven? Because heaven had been waiting for you to choose strength over sympathy. You see, power is not proven by how long you can cry over something broken. Power is proven by how quickly you can rise, shake off the dust, and keep moving forward. The enemy does not fear your tears, he fears your detachment. Because the day you no longer need the approval of man is the day you walk fully in the authority of God. And hear me, the greatest sign of confidence is not in what you can keep, but in what you can release. You thought letting go was loss, but heaven recorded it as gain. You thought silence meant weakness, but in silence, you proved strength. You walked away without explaining yourself, and in that moment, heaven said, now she understands who she is. That move, when you refused to be manipulated, when you stopped answering to the wrong voice, when you detached from what was draining you, shifted everything. What used to break you doesn't break you anymore. What used to control you doesn't control you anymore. That is not arrogance. That is alignment. Woman, the power of your destiny is not in holding on. It is in knowing when to release. The power of your future is not in needing to be understood. It is in being unshaken when you are misunderstood. And that one move, that bold, silent, courageous move, didn't just surprise those around you, it surprised heaven. Heaven does not respond to noise. Heaven responds to decisions. Many people think that if they cry long enough, fast hard enough, or shout loud enough, God will be moved. But listen carefully. A tear may express your pain, but it is your decision that proves your faith. Conviction is the currency of heaven. The angels do not mobilize because you are emotional. They mobilize because you resolve something in your spirit that cannot be shaken. What surprises heaven is not that you endured hardship, but that in the midst of hardship, you stood firm and said, this is where I draw the line. A decisive move is born out of revelation, not reaction. You can be emotional and still remain in bondage. You can cry every night and still return to the same chains the next morning. But when conviction rises, when purpose speaks louder than pain, when you decide to detach from what was crippling you, that is when heaven recognizes you have shifted dimensions. It is not the intensity of your feelings that changes your future. It is the strength of your decision. This is why many remain stuck. They confuse endurance with transformation. Endurance without decision keeps you in cycles. Decision backed by conviction breaks the cycle. Heaven measures your faith not by how long you endure abuse, but by the moment you choose to walk away in strength, not bitterness. That one choice speaks louder than 1,000 prayers of desperation. Conviction is heaven's language. When you finally say, I will no longer be defined by this pain, this relationship, this environment, heaven declares, now she understands her value. That is why decisive moves birthed out of conviction surprise heaven. They carry the weight of destiny and announce that you are ready for what has been waiting for you all along. Emotional detachment is often misunderstood. People think it means becoming cold, unloving, or disconnected from others, but in truth, it is the opposite. Emotional detachment is not about abandoning people. It is about aligning yourself with truth. When you detach emotionally, you are not saying you do not care. You are saying you refuse to be controlled by unstable feelings or manipulated by the expectations of others. It is choosing to be led by principle instead of pressure. Feelings are temporary. They rise and fall like waves, but truth remains constant. If your life is built on emotions, then your peace will be as unstable as the situations around you. But when you detach and anchor yourself in truth, you no longer ride the roller coaster of other people's opinions. You stop living for their approval and begin living from a place of inner clarity. That is why detachment is alignment. It allows you to connect with who you really are and with what God has already spoken over your life. Detachment is not rejection, it is redirection. It is saying, I love you, but I will not allow your actions to dictate my worth. I value you, but I will not sacrifice my destiny for your comfort. This is strength disguised as silence. It is the confidence to walk away without bitterness and to remain calm when others try to pull you into chaos. When you detach, you finally hear your own soul again. You rediscover your peace, your purpose, and your identity apart from the noise around you. Heaven is moved not by your emotional storms, but by your decision to stand steady in truth. Emotional detachment is not shutting down. It is waking up to who you were always meant to be. The true measure of strength is not proven by how tightly you can hold on, but by what you are willing to release without losing yourself. Many people mistake possession for power. They believe the more they can cling to relationships, positions, or material things, the stronger they appear. But strength is not shown in your grip. It is revealed in your ability to let go and remain whole. Real confidence is when you can release something you once thought you could never live without, yet stand firm in your identity because your value was never tied to it in the first place. Letting go is not weakness, it is wisdom. It takes courage to say, I will no longer hold on to what does not honor my future. It takes faith to trust that if something leaves your hand, it does not leave your life. It only makes space for something greater. The truth is, anything you cannot let go of has power over you. If walking away feels like losing yourself, it means your identity was rooted in that thing rather than in God. But when you can release it and still remain at peace, that is the evidence of true strength. Life will test you by what you are willing to release. Sometimes God will allow situations to shake what you thought was permanent, not to hurt you, but to reveal what has been holding you back. Every release is a test of trust. The woman who understands her worth can say goodbye without fear, can close doors without regret, and can detach without resentment. That kind of release surprises both earth and heaven because it announces a shift. Your strength is no longer in what you hold, but in the unshakable confidence of who you are. Purpose will always require pruning. Just as a gardener cuts away branches that are unfruitful or that hinder growth, so must you allow certain relationships, environments, and habits to be trimmed away from your life. The branches are not always bad in themselves, but they may no longer serve where you are going. Something that once gave you shade can now block your sunlight. Something that once carried fruit can now drain the strength of the tree. The pruning process feels painful because you are losing something familiar, but what you are actually gaining is capacity for greater fruitfulness. Every destiny has a weight limit. You cannot carry everyone and everything into your future. Some people were only meant to walk with you for a season. Some opportunities were only meant to teach you a lesson, not to be permanent fixtures in your journey. When you insist on holding on to everything, you slow down your own progress. Pruning is not punishment, it is preparation. It is God's way of saying, I am making room for what is next. When you refuse to prune, your purpose becomes entangled. You find yourself drained, distracted, and burdened by things that no longer align with your calling. But when you allow pruning, clarity returns. You begin to see who you are without the attachments that blurred your identity. You begin to walk lighter, freer, and more focused. A woman of destiny understands that every loss is not a defeat. Sometimes it is a divine cut that makes room for new growth. The removal is not rejection, it is refinement. The hand of the gardener is not taking something away from you, but shaping you into who you must become. Purpose cannot flourish without pruning. Confidence is not always loud. Often it is revealed in silence. When a woman no longer feels the need to argue, explain, or defend herself against every accusation or misunderstanding, it is not weakness. It is evidence of maturity and strength. Silence does not mean you have nothing to say. It means you have chosen to no longer waste words on people who are committed to misunderstanding you. True confidence is the calm assurance that your value is not diminished because someone fails to recognize it. There is power in choosing silence over reaction. When rejection comes and you do not beg to be accepted, when manipulation arises and you do not fall into its trap, when people walk away and you do not chase them, that is confidence. It says, I know who I am and I do not need external validation to confirm it. The ability to remain steady without shouting for recognition proves that your identity is rooted in something deeper than opinion. Silence is a shield. It protects your energy, guards your peace, and keeps you from unnecessary battles. Arguments drain strength, but silence preserves it. A confident woman can smile when others expect her to break, and she can keep moving when others expect her to collapse. This quiet strength confuses the enemy because he cannot manipulate someone who refuses to be rattled. The loudest voice in a room is not always the one speaking. Sometimes it is the one who remains silent yet unshaken. Confidence does not demand attention. It commands it without a word. When you learn to hold your peace, you reveal a strength greater than shouting could ever display. Silence, when rooted in confidence, is not emptiness. It is evidence of unshakable inner power. Heaven does not move in isolation from earth. It responds to the shifts that take place within you. When a woman decides to rise above fear, to detach from toxic patterns, to stop being ruled by opinions and emotions, something shifts not only in her environment, but also in the spiritual realm. Heaven is activated the moment earth witnesses your transformation. That one decision to no longer be defined by what once controlled you sends a signal that you are ready for the next dimension of your assignment. Every act of courage in the natural realm creates a ripple in the spiritual realm. When you say, I will no longer allow myself to be manipulated, you are not just speaking into your circumstances, you are making a declaration that heaven records. Angels are dispatched not because you wished for freedom, but because you demonstrated it through your actions. Faith is not just spoken, it is proven in the choices you make when no one is watching. The shift within you unsettles the enemy and activates the promises of God. Your environment may not understand why you are no longer reacting the way you used to, why their words no longer pierce you, why rejection no longer breaks you. But heaven understands. Heaven celebrates the moment you align with truth, because that alignment gives permission for new doors, new opportunities, and new favor to open in your life. It is not merely your prayer that moves heaven, it is your transformation. Heaven cannot endorse a decision you have not made. But the moment earth witnesses your shift, heaven echoes it with power. When you rise in strength, both realms agree. The old has passed, the new has begun, and destiny is now in motion. True freedom is not found in holding everything together. It is found in the courage to release what no longer serves your destiny and still move forward without fear. Many believe freedom is the absence of pain, but in reality, freedom is the presence of courage. It is the ability to walk away without bitterness, to step into the unknown without anxiety, and to trust that what God has ahead of you is greater than what you left behind. That is when heaven declares she has chosen destiny over distraction. Walking away is often misunderstood as weakness, but it takes far greater strength to leave than it does to cling. Anyone can stay bound to what is familiar, even when it is destructive. But freedom requires faith. Freedom says, I will not let this define me. I will not let this hold me hostage. I choose to trust the God who calls me higher. It is not running from something. It is running toward purpose. Bitterness keeps you tied to the past, but freedom severs those cords. When you can release a person, an environment, or a season without carrying resentment, you prove that your heart is healed and your vision is intact. Freedom allows you to bless what you left, even if it hurt you, and keep moving with your head lifted high. Fear will whisper that if you let go, you will lose everything. But faith replies, if I let go, I make room for what belongs to me. That is why true freedom is such a threat to the enemy. Because once you are no longer bound by fear or offense, you become unstoppable. The woman who can walk away in peace and step forward in confidence is the woman who has chosen destiny over distraction. Woman, hear this clearly. The move you made was not small, it was seismic. Heaven took notice because you chose purpose over pressure, conviction over comfort, destiny over distraction. You did not just walk away from what was holding you. You walked into who you were always meant to be. The power of your life is no longer measured by what you lost, but by what you gained: clarity, freedom, and unshakable strength. This is not the end of your story. This is the unveiling of your true identity. What once controlled you has no authority over you anymore. You have proven that silence can speak louder than arguments, that detachment can reveal destiny, and that one decisive move can surprise heaven itself. So stand tall, walk boldly, and never forget, the moment you chose to let go, everything began to change in your favor.